Greetings, I'm DK Rosner. Welcome back to the TTT News. Some academics, they seem inaccessible to the general public. We are very happy to speak to one person that the description does not apply to. Dr. Roger Hosein is an economist and he joins us to discuss TNT's economy in the context of internal and external factors and some mitigation strategies, including the Shore Foundation. Welcome, Dr. Hosein. How are you doing?
I'm fine, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, one of the things that has been in the public conversation for a little bit now is fuel prices. But at the same time, it was forecast that this is something that was going to happen. What are your thoughts on it at this point in time?
So I am not surprised that fuel prices were increased by the Minister of Finance. For many, many years, this country benefited from fuel subsidies, and we should be thankful for that. And now the economy cannot carry the fuel subsidies, so we have to revert to what is the new normal. And to me, the quicker we get into groove with the new normal is the quicker we can adapt and deal with this new reality. I don't think that the Trinidad and Tobago economy is in a sound financial position to be able to continue with a vast miscellany of the subsidies. So one by one, I appreciate that the Minister of Finance is trying to bring things in order. And I think we need to proceed. We need to proceed and fix the economy as we go along. This is a new normal.
And in terms of fixing that economy, there's some individuals saying that you can do many things that you want to with figures. So whereas we're looking at the fact that our fuel prices are still relatively cheap when you go through the region, some people are asking to get the comparison with cost of living as well as pay structures from the same spaces that those regional fuel prices are garnered from. Do you think that is something that we should be paying a little more attention to, or do we just plow ahead and move forward different ways?
Yes, data we should always make data on the best information subset. The problem is, even if you look at that and you look at the reality of the Trinidad and Tobago economy in the context of the non-energy fiscal deficit and the persistent fiscal deficit, the reality is there. We have no money. We have been generating insufficient revenues. We may get a little blip this year from the energy sector, but energy sector production is generally on the decline. So what do? We have to find ways to cut expenditure and to bring expenditure closer in line with revenues. So the Minister of Finance he has no choice really. He acknowledges that we are in a tight situation and he is trying to fix the economy. It will take several years before he can bring expenditure and revenues in alignment. He would have to focus heavily on growing non-energy revenues as well. I don't think we should get carried away at all from any blip in energy revenues because that's volatile and based mainly on prices, so that the narrative is clear, the interventions are clear, and in some regard, we should give the Minister of Finance credit for doing the hard decisions. I felt he should have done these things 3-4 years ago and fixed the economy so that by now we would have recalibrated. But we are where we are, and we have to try to do the best that we could now.
And with that in mind, in terms of moving forward, what do you think may be the next subsidy or price shift that may happen like that?
So I speak here in my individual capacity as Roger Hosein, and I cannot speak to any institution with which I am aligned. I speak in my own view. And I have heard talk that there is the intention to possibly raise university tuition fees. So in a sense, to reduce the dependence on GATE directly. We would have to see how that goes as well. But my view is that the economy is in a bad position. We have not grown since 2015. This economy is about 16% smaller in size than in 2009, 2008. So there is a lot of work to be done, and maybe the GATE subsidy, maybe next, maybe they may cut some subventions to state-owned enterprises and public utilities after. And all of these things I support. I support amending changes to the amount of subsidy we provide to state-owned enterprises. I really don't want to be using my taxpayer dollars to subsidize state-owned enterprises. I am only doing that because I have no say and the state is using the money in that regard. I think our state-owned enterprises, those that have the room to be commercially viable, should be allowed to be commercially viable. And the same applies to our statutory boards and utility companies.
And with that in mind, we take a short break. When we return, we want to look at things from a little different angle, because I started off saying that some academics, you can't find them too well. They're in the office, they're writing a paper. But we do have the footage today, but I saw some footage of you running down a car balling free seedlings. And that is one of the things we want to be talking about in terms of the Shaw Foundation. When we return, we are speaking with economist Dr. Roger Hosein. Stay with us, we return with more. Welcome back. We are looking at the economic outlook for Trinidad and Tobago. We're doing this with economist Dr. Roger Hosein. And Dr. Hosein, in terms of shifting a little bit, I want you to tell me what the Shaw Foundation is about in light of the conversation that we've been having. And how does the Shaw Foundation factor into making things better? And give me the role of the Shaw Foundation as well. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not on the executive of the Shaw Foundation anymore. I'm just an ordinary member of the foundation. The president is now Dr. Rebecca Gokul. What this foundation was started 12 years ago. The intent of the foundation is to help build national food security. And this has accentuated in the recent past with the pandemic and with the Russia invasion of Ukraine. We are on a drive to give out 2 million seedlings. We have given out about 1.3 million so far. And the intention is to take some carbon dioxide out of the air, as well as to reduce the use of foreign exchange in buying food. So it's a slow process, it's a continuous process. We have been well supported by the community and several firms. And we continue to go in the trenches and get things done. And we have been seeing tremendous results in terms of people eager and enthusiastic to grow their own food. And we hope that this could become part of a growing subculture amongst our people, where they grow their own food and try to become a little more food secure, and in that way help the country from a micro level spiraling into a macro level impact.
And where you're getting those seedlings from, Dr. Hosein? Because it's 2 million, you say, you know?
Yes, so we have been growing some, we have been buying some, and it's a combination. It's a slow process. Every week we give out 12,500 to 25,000. And we have been on the field every Saturday since the first week that the Prime Minister closed Trinidad and Tobago because of the pandemic. So that's over 100 and probably 20 continuous Saturdays.
And how do you
single Saturday.
Okay, and how do you all go about saying, okay, well, this is the group that we're going to work with? Because just from, we would have seen you doing some work with No Youth Left Behind, and that I think was the Destiny Beach. You're also working with Mangrove at that point in time, Lighthouse Limited, looking at recycling projects. Who do you decide, okay, well, these are groups and persons and bodies that we're going to partner with?
Right. So we try to rotate along the economy in different parts, and then when groups reach out to us, we facilitate them. So it's part of a strategy of moving from Arima from San Grande to Arima to Tunapuna to St. Augustine and so on, and then back down south, go to the southwest and down to the southeast and so on, and then to central. So it's part of a strategy, and then specifically when groups reach out to us, we go to those groups as well. So it's part of supply and part of demand in terms of meeting where we go and how we go. We are trying not to leave out any area. We have even partnered with a group in Tobago. It's a lot of work, as I keep saying to you, a lot of packing and cleaning and preparation, but we continue bravely. We are also thinking about planting up all community centers, all supporting all schools in Trinidad and Tobago. So we are going along in a slow, structured, organized fashion. And again, I can tell you we are getting good support and we are getting good feedback where we collect whatever data and whatever pictures we can from people that benefit from these seedlings. It's really heartwarming. And in our judgment, it's going exceptionally well.
And do you find, in terms of working towards diversification of the economy, a little earlier you reminded us that we shouldn't be too comfortable or lackadaisical if we get a little blip upwards on through energy prices. But what are some of these things that you want to see? Okay, well, Shore Foundation has given you a start. We want you to continue a little bit. What are some of those things that you're looking forward to, you're hoping to see?
Well, that's a question with two distinct parts. They are not really related, but I will try to see how I can relate them. So at the level of the Shore Foundation, we hope that after a subculture of agriculture is rebuilt in some households, that when the seedlings they receive from us, maybe one time or two times is finished, they would have developed a pattern and a trend that they would follow up on their own. When they buy Karaili in the market, they could save the seeds and dry it and plant it. When they buy same and body, the same. When they buy pumpkin, the same. There are so many seeds that we collect in different ways. And if you look at the data, you would see that the real spike in the food price index come from two subcategories, fruits and vegetables. So we have been focusing heavily on vegetables and we are gradually moving into fruits. And as I say, I hope that the subculture is built up within the household. So after the experience and interfacing with the Shore Foundation with a little push and a little start, that they would now do some of this on their own. The diversification question in a broader sense uh, at the macro level requires the state to fix the ease of doing business. It is too difficult to do business in Trinidad and Tobago. And whilst the World Bank may have stopped the use of doing business ranking, for the time being, these subcomponents are there and we need to look at them and we need to see where we can improve so that it becomes easier to move capital into different areas and arms of the business community to help create economic output and create employment. It is too difficult.
And do you think that some of these supply chain issues, some of the facts that we're saying, okay, well, we're missing Forex that we would normally use to purchase some of these things from outside, will have spur movement towards us being a little more self-sufficient internally, Dr. Hosein? Saying, okay, well, we need to get it done, let us do it ourselves.
Well, there's only so much we can do ourselves because we are a heavily import dependent economy. But what my view is that if that aspect of what can be done, we should do it. So there are some areas in food production, for example, where if we increase the production of tomatoes, we increase the production of um, sweet peppers, and any crop we may import just a little of pineapples. If we increase domestic production of those things, then we could reduce or remove the need for foreign exchange to import the same. So I would take a very simplistic view from an agricultural perspective. I would look at some of the crops we import that we have domestic productive capability in, and I would increase domestic production capability so that we wouldn't have to import. That's the simplistic view I would take. And then I would look at other crops where, although where we could import substitute. So, for example, if we could produce um, more Pamarak and more Julie Mango and more Sapodilla and more Soursop, then it would help us with the need to import probably more apples, probably, and probably more pears, because you are getting fiber and vitamin C and other similar nutrients from domestic fruits that it could possibly substitute, although not perfectly, the need to import other type of fruits, and I'm really banking that the people of Trinidad and Tobago will go this route and be good citizens in terms of saving foreign exchange, given that the amount of foreign exchange in reserves is almost similar to the external debt, you know. So we have to be very wise in the use of foreign exchange now, in
That
my
makes
view.
me, and that makes me feel as though you're comparing apples to oranges, literally. But it also feels as though there is work that would have to be done, as opposed to just saying, okay, well, this makes sense. Things to get that behavior exchange, because people used to this and they used to that, as opposed to saying, okay, well, that growing in my yard, I don't want it.
I'll tell you something. You know, you must never waste a good crisis, eh? And as I said earlier, our stock of foreign exchange is, if we exclude the SSF, is basically equivalent to the external debt, about the same. So now is a good time for the Minister of Finance to come straight to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, explain that to them, and tell them, you know, the here we're going on talk that you sometimes have at home with your family. Here we're going on. This is the situation, so we need to conserve foreign exchange where we can. Yes, I understand that you all like some of the imported foods, but where we could substitute the domestic food, let us hold each other hand and try to work on our domestic situation and improve our domestic affairs. And where we could save foreign exchange, let's do it in terms of being responsible citizens. Certainly that's the approach I would take as if I were Minister of Agriculture or Minister of Finance, and I urge the relevant policymakers to consider the simplistic advice if there is any merit in it.
And lastly, Dr. Hosein, we asked for the Shaw Foundation's contact information, because as opposed to just bodies possibly wanting you to pass through with seedlings, there may be other groups. I'm thinking of there's a group that deals with breadfruit and other things like that, saying, okay, well, possibly we can pool efforts towards the same cause, the common cause.
I can't remember the email address for the foundation. I will give you my cell number for the time being, 7609735. I would just relay the messages. I'm not at liberty to give out the president number because I didn't ask her. But what I would say, you could use my number. And also, we have formed a little group of NGOs in Trinidad and Tobago that do agricultural work. And that's why I mentioned Lizzie earlier from TTT. I know she has one of these groups. There are quite a few groups that we have formed a little NGO, and we are trying to build it. So if any NGO is involved in agriculture or agricultural chain or want to become involved, they could contact me, and we would put them on the group, and we work together hand in hand and try to help our country.
And thank you very much, Dr. Hosein. But here we're going on the conversation out of time. So we thank you very much for joining us and sharing this knowledge. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, DK Roster. Thank you so much for joining us.